In the graveyard shadows dance, step too close and take your chance. In the forest dark where shadows creep, there's absolutely no time to sleep. Through twisted trees you dash in fear, gravestones rise as shadows near. Swings move slow with no one near, and whispers fill the air with fear. In a world where pumpkins grow silently, one man can hear them, the only one who truly understands their hopes, their dreams, their deepest fears. With carving tools raised and a twinkle in his eye, he whispers to pumpkins, it's time to comply. It's nearly time to delve even deeper, to explore even more digital nightmares. Welcome to a world where fear is pixelated, where terror lurks behind every corner. I urge you to be careful. Things may never be the same again. It's that time of year to ensure I attend to my pumpkins. Although my pumpkins never look quite this good. It's worth the go though, as I am very excited to carve my own masterpieces. Oh, hang on a minute. This is not looking good. I seem to have made a monumental pumpkin error. Well, forget that then. Better luck next year. Gather round, it's time for fright, a horror collection to spook your night. From ghosts that trip and ghouls that dance, be careful that you don't end up in a trance. Grab your snacks, don't be shy, let's dive into terror, give these games a try. Scream because it says so. On Halloween, can 31 horror games be found? On 31 systems on the 31st of October. Extra fun to be unlocked in creepy hallways and lanes filled with ghostly claims for 31 even more horror games. Imagine, if you will, a world where tomatoes aren't just a delicious addition to your salad, they're the villains. That's the juicy premise behind Attack of the Killer Tomatoes for the Game Boy. Based on the equally bizarre 1978 cult movie, the game follows our brave hero, Chad, as he tries to stop an invasion of sinister, sentient tomatoes. Now you might be wondering, how terrifying could pixelated tomatoes really be? Well, the answer is not very, but boy, do they give it their all. As you side-scroll your way through garden variety levels, you'll dodge bouncing tomatoes, flying tomatoes, and tomatoes with a vendetta. It's tomato madness. There's even a boss battle where you square off against, wait for it, a giant tomato. The controls are simple enough, but they've got the kind of delay that makes Chad feel like he's wading through tomato soup. You'll jump at a moment's notice, only to land too late, making dodging enemies an unpredictable game of will this tomato splat me today. It's an experience akin to trying to catch a tomato with oven mitts. Some people may describe BonkersWax Up as a riotous ride that combines colourful chaos, silly shenanigans, and enough wax to make any candle jealous. But I wouldn't, and it wouldn't be factually accurate anyway. This game is based on an animated television series called Bonkers. I've never seen the show, and I can assure you I never will. Control a mad bobcat called Bonkers, and rescue several cartoons encased as wax statues, collect clues, and dodge and jump your way into glory. Mummies and scary spiderwebs adorn a creepy mansion to help give you the full atmospheric effect of an eerie situation. I've never been a fan of spiders, particularly the incredibly large ones that just sit there and stare at you, waiting for you to make the first move. I was hoping to enjoy this game, but I can't. Controlling mindless cat around a lackluster castle or home and wandering aimlessly up and down staircases is not my idea of a fun Friday night, or any day of the week in fact, is just bonkers. My good friend is mildly obsessed with Castlevania on the Super Nintendo, and if I am honest, so am I. So I couldn't wait to get my hands on the next adventure for our lovable rogue. But wait, this is not the Castlevania I am used to at all. For a start, all the names are very different, adding instant confusion. Where is Simon Belmont? But I see we are still after Mr. Dracula, so some things remain mildly familiar. There's a distinct sense of a lot of puzzles to be sorted before things really kick off, and there is a mildly infuriating camera and view system to navigate, which may cause you to throw the N64 pad or whatever receptacle you are choosing out of the window. I'm not sure if I can ever get used to 3D. I'm more a traditional 2D man. But that's not to say this game hasn't got potential. In certain circles, I've been told that this game is amazing. But I'm not currently in a circle. I'm in a square. I remember the fun of going to see Mary Shelley's Frankenstein at a local cinema. It had an even bigger excitement attached to the experience, as there was a huge PVC banner hanging in the foyer. Imagine a game that captured this excitement, squeezed onto a portable compact disc to insert into Sega's oversized Sony Walkman game playing box of wonder. But what is this game all about? Well, if you haven't read the book or seen the film, I really cannot help you, except to say Branagh was in it, and De Niro was in it, and they're quite good really. The game starts as it means to go on, clunky and slow, and frustrating in its execution. But hang on a minute, what have we here? The game has given birth to a monumental shift in extreme complication and turned itself into a Mortal Kombat style brawler just to wake you up, in case you had quite probably fallen asleep to this game. Well, this is more like it. Now you can have some zombie kicking action courtesy of Shelley and whoever made this game. Though I'm not sure if that's really a zombie, just a fella. Imagine if Frankenstein was a mix of Myst and Dragon's Lair, but without any of the charm or fluidity of either. Enjoy or endure 16 levels of Garfield trying to escape his own nightmare. Now doesn't that sound like fun? Garfield decides to eat lots of junk food, instantly transporting him into a terrible nightmare where you must jump and battle your way to the end. Oh, here we go. I suspect this will be yet another platform adventure with a few ghosts in a castle. Not the most inspiring of games or demonstration of a true nightmare, but then we mustn't forget this game was built for the Nintendo DS. What does DS stand for? Dual screen. Although don't get too excited about that. What I was excited to find out was that this was a popular theme park attraction and dark ride at Kennywood Park in the United States. What was more concerning though is that I have actually been to this park, but I do not remember going on this ride. Although that probably says more about my memory than it does this game, unless the two are inextricably linked and there is something really funny going on. How can you describe Garfield's Nightmare? You could describe it as a wonderful successor to the Super Mario franchise, but bathed in a warm bath of ghoulish ferocity. But I won't be doing that. Not at all. Big and chunky graphics, may look good on a tiny handheld, but looking good won't get you into the big leagues of fun, horror, action games, will it? No, it will not. Not at all. Zombhai is not a place that exists in the real world. I know this because I checked, and I was a bit sad to find this out really. It has been a while since I visited Sony's bold attempt to get into the handheld market, but bold prevailed, and there are a wide variety of interesting titles to be found, if you are prepared to give yourself a few days of careful exploration and a mild cup of tea. This game is part of the Minis branding, much smaller games, and were only available for download only. But don't let that put you off. There are some genuinely wonderful games out there. For people who like facts, there are 294 PlayStation mini games out there, according to the internets. Anyway, I digress. What happens in Zombhai? Well, you're a bloke with a selection of weapons, and you have to murder zombies and walk across the screen. I probably haven't explained that very well, but what I will say is that the cartoony graphics and fantastical blood splattering are an absolute joy to behold. I played this game for about 8 minutes, which is about 7 minutes more than I play most other games, so that is a mark of quality in my book. Zombhai, or LTDIZ for short, came out in 2011, a momentous year, as this was the same year that Charlie Sheen was fired from 2.5 Men. Will Zombhai be a lasting game? Not really. You could probably complete it in the time it takes you to cook an adequate roast dinner, but that's good enough for me. I have not switched on my Switch, no pun intended, for about 7 months due to various complications and a recent reshuffle of all my consoles and handheld devices. And the first time I switched it on, after leaving it unswitched, I decided to select a random, suitably bloody game, and I came across this interesting affair. They Bleed Pixels is like someone threw Super Meat Boy and Lovecraftian horror into a blender, then spiced it up with a dash of pure rage. You start thinking, oh, it's just a cute little platformer, but by the second level, you're questioning your life choices. The game teaches you patience, but not in a zen, calming way, more like that frustrating trial and error style where you die 50 times only to realise you needed to wall jump 2 pixels to the left. The combat? Satisfyingly brutal, if you can get the timing right and not accidentally yeet yourself into a bed of spikes. Again, every enemy you defeat feels like a personal triumph, but the real boss in this game is gravity. It's like the floor is lava, except the floor is actually covered in more spikes than your average villain's lair. It's all wrapped in a creepy, cute, pixelated aesthetic that makes your repeated deaths look almost charming. It's the kind of game where you'll scream in frustration, then keep playing because somehow dying that many times becomes part of the fun. Definitely not for the faint-hearted, but hey, if you're into pixel art, punishing difficulty and self-inflicted pain, They Bleed Pixels will give you plenty of bleeding. Our adventure begins with Luigi winning a mansion in a contest he never entered. Because nothing says I love you, Mario, quite like dragging your brother into a spooky house filled with spectres, armed with his trusty Poltergust 3000, a vacuum cleaner on steroids. Luigi's job is to suck up ghosts and uncover the mansion's mysteries. The gameplay is a delightful mix of puzzle solving and ghost hunting. You'll be hunting down beautiful ghosts with more personality than some people you may know. From a ghostly butler who can't stop tidying up to a chandelier swinging spirit that really knows how to throw a party, you'll meet an array of colourful characters that make haunting look like a blast. For a game that came out in 2001, Luigi's Mansion looks incredibly sharp. But don't think you can just waltz through this mansion unscathed. Luigi's fright meter is as real as his fear of ghosts. One spooky surprise, and this guy jumps higher than Mario on a superstar. You'll spend half the game laughing at Luigi's hilarious, over-the-top reaction. Maybe he should get an Oscar for Best Performance in a Haunted House. So if you're looking for a game that's equal parts charming, funny, and a little bit creepy, grab your Gamecube and dive into Luigi's Mansion. An utter, total classic. Based on the popular murder weapon holding leather-faced man movie that caused considerable uproar in its day, a bold move for Atari back in the day, and suitable controversy was caused as a result, causing a monumental refusal by stores to even sell this game due to, and I quote, its violent nature. The clue's in the title really, isn't it? It's not called the Texas cuteness of adorable carnage, is it? We're back to familiar green pixel territory with a small looking boy in blue with what seems to be a rather large appendage. Come on, we're better than that. Carve up people and avoid obstacles that are randomly scattered across the mundane playfield. This game is old, so there wasn't too much power back then to shift necessary pixels and display them in all their frames per second glory, but that shouldn't excuse Atari. There's plenty of fun to be had with just a couple of pixels. Sadly, this game has many more than 2 pixels, and sadly, this game isn't fun at all. Controlling Mr. Face becomes a tiresome affair, and the piercing sounds of the TIA chip will slowly drive you to continual madness. Is this game horror? Yes, it's pretty horrific. What happens when the macabre charm of the Addams family gets squished into the guts of a PC Engine CD? You get a game that's more Uncle Fester than Gomez, bumbling, strange, and just a little bit scary for all the wrong reasons. Become Tully Alford, a crooked family attorney, and find your way to the Addams family vault and steal all the treasure. Controlling Tully is like trying to steer a wheel of cheese down a hill. The mansion is packed with traps and enemies, none of which makes sense, naturally. You'll be fighting haunted chairs, bats that think they're pterodactyls, and deadly chandeliers. But of course you will. The puzzles are more cryptic than Uncle Fester's electric bill, and half the time you're not sure if the game's broken or just laughing at your attempts to understand it. A switch doesn't open a door. Try jumping on it. The walls are closing in. Maybe crouching will help. Because of the invention of the CD, there's FMV, tiny, grainy, full motion video cutscenes where you get to see the Addams family members looking like they've been trapped in a video compression nightmare, like they're begging you to rescue them from the game itself. A bizarre, kooky experience that you can't help but admire for its dedication to being weird. If you're a fan of games that are more confusing than a haunted house designed by Escher, grab your controller, slide into Alfred's loafers, and prepare for a wild, awkward, and laughably spooky ride. The on-rail shooter department is a department that is often filled with too many socks that you do not want to own, and are often disappointed when you receive them on a cold winter's Christmas morning. I can say with considerable excitement that Zombie Raid is a shooter that does not disappoint in this department, and if it were a pair of socks, it would be a very pleasant and comfortable pair that you would cherish for a number of years. There may be a plot, but in reality, does it really matter? You get to shoot zombies and have lots of fun. There isn't really much more to say about this game, other than it is a total blast. Classic zombie apocalypse fare. Endless waves of the undead stumbling toward you with the coordination of a drunk uncle at a wedding. Would it be better with a light gun? Well, of course it would, and there are suitable advancements in technology these days for you to own a special light gun to further enhance your arcade experience. But do not worry too much, as even without a gun, you are still guaranteed a ruddy good time. An equally positive point on this game is the fantastic trailer man voice announcing that you are playing Zombie Raid. I really enjoyed that bit, and you should too. Pump up and just play it.
Zombie Raid, Zombie Raid, Zombie Raid, Zombie Raid, Zombie Raid.
That's enough of that. Bart's Nightmare, also known as Bart's Fever Dream of Torture, starts with Bart falling asleep while doing homework, which is ironic because the real nightmare begins when you pick up the controller. You're dropped into a trippy Springfield street where mailboxes attack, giant heads float around, and Bart controls like he's wearing buttered shoes. The goal? Find pieces of his homework scattered across insane minigames, but instead you'll spend most of your time getting smacked by psychotic basketballs or blasted by Lisa as a fairy. Why? Who knows? I suppose the graphics are fine for 1992, but everything else feels like a prank the developers played on us. It's more Bart's nightmare for you than him. This game should stay asleep forever. Crazy and chewy are two words I would never have thought would be smashed together to unite in what poses to be one of the most unusual Game & Watch games I have ever set both my eyes on. Released as Astro Wars in Japan, this game bears a mild resemblance to Pac-Man, and when I say mild, I mean non-existent. Move a green blob around a maze, picking up what seems to be tiny eggs with a strange spaceship floating around. What's that on the front of the console too? Is that a frog? I'm still none the wiser of what a crazy Chewy is either. Is this a horror game? It's pretty scary. Is this real? What even is going on right now? Maybe I'm in another nightmare. We've had plenty of those already. Oh, I cannot bear those beeps any longer. Get rid of it. Crossbow on the Atari 7800 is what happens when someone gives you a crossbow and a bunch of helpless adventurers and tells you, protect these idiots from absolutely everything. Simple? Not so much. You're in charge of guiding these little pixel people through deadly environments, except they don't care about survival. They waddle slowly through lava pits, crumbling cliffs, and giant scorpions like they're on a casual stroll. Meanwhile, you are stuck frantically shooting at every hazard in sight with a crossbow that feels like it was built from spare parts and hope. It's like trying to protect a group of lemmings who all secretly have a death wish. The graphics ensure every adventurer looks like they've been crafted from leftover Lego pieces, and the enemies are just colourful blobs trying their best to scare you. The sound effects are basic digital farts, and the music is so repetitive it'll burrow into your brain and haunt your dreams forever. Every level gets more ridiculous, with bats, snakes and boulders flying at your crew, like you're stuck in an Indiana Jones theme park ride gone horribly wrong. It's like babysitting at a circus, where the kids deliberately throw themselves into lion cages while you're trying to juggle chainsaws. By the time you save a few of these brain-dead adventurers, you'll feel more like their frazzled parent than a legendary crossbow master. Or, more likely, you'll just let them die and blame it on poor reflexes. Hardest part isn't the game. It's caring enough to stop them from walking off a cliff. My good friend and I used to play Doom 2 in a dark room for hours on end. We did this for many reasons. One was because I had a PC. Two, because it was fun. And that's all you need to know about that, really. I must say, revisiting this game did give me considerable goosebumps and took me right back into that darkened room where we scared the bejesus out of each other when confronted with scary grunting noises and the faint sound of doors opening and closing. There's probably not much point in going on much further, as I am quite sure that everyone on the planet knows what Doom is, and by default knows what Doom 2 is, and I'm quite sure that everyone on the planet has reviewed and commented on this game 1,000,000 times, but I haven't. So I think I will allow some minor indulgence whilst I revisit a complete classic. Doom 2 on the PC is what happens when you take the original Doom, give it a heavy metal soundtrack, double the insanity, and then slap a big welcome to hell sign at the entrance. You're back as the nameless space marine, still packing more guns than a Texas flea market, and once again tasked with shooting everything that moves, and everything that doesn't, just to be safe. The story here is something about Earth being invaded by demons. This game isn't about deep narratives. Doom 2 is all about violence. Glorious, pixelated violence. You're not here to think. You're here to blow things up. And if you stop to wonder why there's a giant floating demon skull spitting fireballs at you, you're playing it wrong. So, what is Doom 2? It's a game where you blow up everything that moves. I've already explained that. and it throws every monster and ridiculous level design it can at you just to see if you can handle it. It's unfair, it's brutal, and it's somehow still hilarious. Nothing makes sense, and yet it makes all the sense. Doom 2 is a glorious, hellish, metal-filled, demon-slaying ride that doesn't care if you're frustrated or lost. It just wants you to keep shooting, and you will. Friday the 13th, the game, on Xbox One, lets you live out your childhood dreams or nightmares of being running around a summer camp and actually being Jason Voorhees, the world's most persistent guy with mommy issues. It's basically a horror movie turned multiplayer madhouse. The world's worst summer camp simulator on Microsoft's flagship conventionally named One console invites you to play in super high definition and go on a mad rampage, hacking up school counsellors and smashing in doors and windows to your heart's content. I've lost track of how many Friday the 13th films there are, but I have been reliably informed that there are in fact 12 films. The story of a little boy who drowned at Camp Crystal Lake due to the naughty behaviour of the camp staff. Thus a curse was born and a setting for several murders. One of the most successful horror franchises going, paving the way for numerous people buying numerous hockey masks. But what about the game? Well, it doesn't seem that long ago that I was comfortably playing the Evil Dead game. It reminds me a lot of that. It's just more high-gloss trees and woods, but with a different character, airbrushed in, and enacting mayhem along the way. Is this a bad thing? I mean, this game is doing nothing wrong, really. If you like the idea of controlling a massive man and murdering people in a variety of suitably horrific ways, this game is probably for you. If you like the movies, then this game is probably for you. Is it probably for me? I'm not sure if it probably is. There's just something lacking for me. After the first 5 minutes, the unbearable repetitiveness just makes me think that I would be far better playing a more substantially fun game that I know and love. Maybe I will. Maybe I will just put this down and never return to it ever again. Well made, high definition, high frames per second games might be good in my friend's book, but they're not always necessarily in my book at all. A Pico 8 is a fantasy console to play tiny little games. You can play these games on a variety of tiny systems or as an app. It's worth delving into the world of 8, as you might find some unusual offerings, such as this delight. I never even thought about punching a ghost until I played Ghost Punch, but I'm glad I did. And if you are after a game that will put a smile on your face and while away the boredom of waiting at a local bus stop for a small journey to your local retail establishment to purchase a small pack of screws, then this game is massively for you. Brawl your way through enemies in charmingly pixelated arenas. The gameplay is simple but addictive. You float, punch and dodge while rocking that classic retro 8-bit vibe. It's like Pac-Man met Mike Tyson and they became best friends in a haunted arcade. Each stage amps up the action, giving you just enough challenge without making you want to ghost the game entirely. Plus, it's got that quirky retro charm that makes you grin while you mash buttons. And that's good, in anybody's book. It's at this point I start to get a little weary about yet another horror platform game. Why are there so many about? I did love the Commodore Amiga back in the day, and I was not delighted to find that there was a game called Horror Zombies from the Crypt. I mean, it looks inviting from the title and eerie hand, but do not let that fool you. A considered charming Amiga sheen with vibrant colours that look like they were plucked from a candy store. Jump through levels, avoid traps, collect items, the usual shtick. You have the choice to have this dark brooding music and no sound effects, or no dark brooding music and full sound effects. I will let you decide after hearing both which one is less painful. Inspired by the 50s horror movies, you are actually a Count Frederick Valdemar, wandering around a mansion, collecting skulls through 6 levels of aggravated upset. Published by the famous US Gold, this game was spread across further platforms, including the much adored Atari ST and standard PC, operating on MS-DOS. Controlling little bespoke colourful men around large houses or castles can soon become incredibly tiring, so I'm not going to do it anymore. Kirby's back, and this time he's not messing around. Nightmare in Dreamland on the Game Boy Advance is a remake of the NES classic, and it's got more charm than Kirby has stomach space. You play as Kirby, the round pink vacuum cleaner of destruction, inhaling enemies and copying their powers like it's nobody's business. Want to turn into a fireball? Sure. Become a sword-swinging puffball? Why not? Kirby's powers are as varied as the game is adorable. The levels are bright, colourful and packed with secrets, and every corner of Dreamland feels like it was designed to make you go "Aww." But don't be fooled by the cuteness, as before long you'll realise this game's got bite behind the fluff. Whether you're a fan of Kirby's floaty, cheerful platforming or just want to vacuum up baddies in style, Nightmare in Dreamland is a delightful, charming ride that never gets old. Sweet, fun, and makes you want to hug or eat everything. You're armed with a laser gun, ready to face down the scariest ghosts 8-bit graphics can muster. Tasked with saving a damsel in distress from a haunted nightmare, except the scariest thing here might be the game's music, which feels like a haunted xylophone got stuck on repeat. Still, you can't help but get sucked into the spooky fun chaos. I am very surprised to find this game hiding in plain sight on Sega's quietly confident black slab of plastic. Shoot your way through 7 levels of mischievous mayhem, and if you are very lucky to own the light phaser gun, you can plug this into your system and actually feel like you're at the arcades again. Sega couldn't be bothered to give you a name, so you remain a silent ghost hunter who, after being contacted by Catherine, needs your help for her to escape from Ghost City, a city that only appears every 13 years. How incredibly spooky. protect Catherine at all costs and ensure she escapes the terrible city before she loses her soul forever. In the end, Laser Ghost is a quirky, ghost-zapping, finger-pointing adventure where the real horror might just be the amount of time you'll spend laughing at how ridiculous it all is. But ridiculous can be fun. But can fun be ridiculous? Well, of course it can. Playing little Nicky on Game Boy Color is like watching the movie, except with fewer laughs and way more button mashing frustration. You control Nicky, the son of Satan, on a mission to save hell. Sounds epic. Well, it would be, if Nicky didn't handle like he's been hit in the head with a shovel one too many times. The graphics are classic Game Boy Color, meaning everything looks like it was drawn with a crayon by a very tired demon. Nicky himself looks less like Adam Sandler and more like a confused Lego man. As for the enemies, I think they're supposed to be evil, but they come off as more like irritated pedestrians in a hell-themed theme park. It may help you with this game if you are an Adam Sandler fan. Then again, it may not. I am told that this is a fiercely accurate movie adaptation, but then you cannot believe everything you read. You can make your own mind up. I am just here to display to you some of the more interesting games that are out there. The film follows Nicky, a sweet-natured but awkward youngest son of Satan, and follows the highly bankable actor Adam Sandler in his travels to New York City to stop his brothers from taking over both hell and earth. Somebody told me Ozzy Osbourne is in it, but I can't remember who that was. Anyway, that's enough digressing. If you get bored of the main game, and I suspect you will, enjoy 5 demented mini-games as shown here. The sound effects are something special too, especially terrible. Although the developers have done an incredible job of trying to digitize speech on such a tiny portable beast, and maybe they should be thanked for that. Thanks. Each minigame feels like it was designed as a prank to see how long players would stick around before throwing their Game Boy across the room. But hey, at least it's a fun kind of frustration, like trying to eat spaghetti with a straw. Mr. Satanhead, are you having a complete laugh? Oh, come on. I'm not sure I can bear much more of these minigames. I suppose it could be a little bit of fun, but I'm really stretching it now. I think I'm coming to the end. But not before I try my hand at Peeper's fishing hole. Here we go. This has got to be worth the crack. Okay, not much happening. What do I have to even do? Dangle myself about a bit, presumably, and catch fish. Incredible. Incredible that I'm still playing this. Oh, hey, here we go. No, I'm not doing it anymore. Monster Party is less of a horror adventure and more of an acid trip through a Halloween store's clearance section. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's why it's great. It's a monster mashup of the bizarre, where you'll leave wondering, did I just fight a talking plant or have a weird dream after eating too many crisps? You play as Mark, a totally average kid armed with nothing more than a baseball bat. Well, that's good enough for me. Bathed in typical NES game difficulty levels, which will have you reaching for your own baseball bat, this game will require a modest degree of patience something which I don't really have for these types of games. A wild, weird ride, perfect for those who like their horror with a side of pickled eggs. The game stands out for its weird humour, like bosses who quit mid-fight because they're tired, and strange but funny dialogue that makes no sense. The gameplay is simple and clunky, but the absurdity makes it a fun, so bad it's good kind of experience. By stage 2 of the game, you turn into a dragon who can shoot projectiles. But of course you can. Why would you ever question this? The game boasts a solid 8 levels, but as this game is old, you can rely on the old password system that will allow you to continue where you left off. Just beat bosses, get a key, and move on. Bit like life, really. This game is like watching Indiana Jones get lost in an arcade machine from the 80s. You play as Panama Joe, a little dude who's trapped in a pyramid, dodging skeletons, snakes and fire pits, all whilst trying to snag treasure. Hang on a minute. The tapes must have been mixed up. This surely is not a horror game classic. An Indiana Jones style romp does not sound very scary to me. There are tombs and caves. Can they be scary? Yes. Are there skulls? Yes. Skulls are scary and frequently appear in horror games. Revenge. Horror games do frequently have themes of revenge. Maybe I'm not selling this correctly. I'll try again. Maybe it just needs a bit of gentle reimagining. You play as Panama Joe, an unfortunate adventurer trapped in the cursed halls of a long-abandoned pyramid. The atmosphere is thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by distant echoes of sinister whispers and the clattering of bones. As you navigate the shadowy corridors, dark corners hide nightmarish creatures, ghostly skeletons that leap out from the shadows, and snakes that slither menacingly, ready to strike. The traps. Absolutely gruesome. Fiery pits and spikes that seem almost sentient, eager to claim your life with each misstep. Each room feels like a puzzle of despair, with the walls seemingly closing in as you uncover dark secrets about the pyramid's past. Treasure becomes a curse as you realise the riches come with a price. Your sanity. Every time you think you've escaped, another shadowy figure appears, reminding you that in this twisted nightmare, the real horror is not the monsters lurking in the dark, but the endless cycle of death and resurrection in this haunted tomb. Cheers. Once in a while, a game arrives that scares you to your absolute core. Once in a while, a game arrives that is so refreshing in its delivery that you forget about almost all other games as you become so transfixed with this new game, and this game is none Massacre. Bathed in warm nostalgia from a forgotten time, where all you had to worry about was which VHS video movie you wished to play next. None Massacre attempts to reinvent the old classic horror retro game feel while splicing it with all those dodgy horror videos you used to watch as a small child and scare yourself half to death. I remember doing this rather classically with A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I don't think I went to bed for about 10 weeks. The graphics have a intentional retro, blocky style that feels like you're playing on a console from the 90s, which adds to the overall eerie vibe, but you'll also find yourself laughing at how silly it looks at times. The gameplay is all about stealth, so you'll spend a lot of time hiding in lockers. Your daughter has fallen ill, at a boarding school, and it is your job to go and pick her up, whilst avoiding a creepy nun. If spotted, the nun will chase you down and kill you. For people who like facts, it sometimes goes under the name Night of the Nun. A toilet might be the answer you're looking for. I would urge you to play this game in pitch blackness to add to the additional nervousness. It does make a difference and puts you even more on edge. I must admit I haven't got too far in this game as it scares me too much. It is probably a good game to play with a comfortable party of good friends to help you in your quest. First up, find a handy plank to build a semi-floor to walk upon, and remember to explore every door and drawer you can find for little clues, objects and items that can interact with your terrifying environment. Oh dear, now I am proper in for it. My good friend is fascinated by the Commodore 64, so much so he still has hundreds of original boxed games for the obscure beige brick created by those clever people at Commodore. I was delighted to find a Commodore 64 game that met the requirements of a horror game. Why does it meet them? Because this game is all about monsters, and monsters are scary. A movie theme is always a nice thing to have, and this game also has a variety of scenarios to play, as well as being able to play slightly recognisable characters from films you may recognise, but they're slightly knocked off versions. You have a choice of using Mechatron, Godzilla, Mr. Meringue, Spectra, and the Glog. Control these giant monsters rampaging through a pixelated city. Destroy as much of the city as possible, whilst avoiding military forces. Dodge tanks and helicopters. A wild ride of clunky controls, laughable graphics, but this game has a sense of warm nostalgia. I never had a Commodore 64, so I had to ask my good friend if he had ever played the movie monster game, and he said, "I don't think so," and that was the end of the conversation. I am fairly certain that the little ditty music and sound effects might drive you to eventual aggression, so you may wish to limit your game playing to a suitably short amount. I'm not sure how much fun you can have endlessly walking around drab grey buildings and destroying them, but the game may give you a short chuckle, and sometimes that's all we need in life. Oh come on, this is just sheer robotic nonsense. The same good friend of mine who likes his Commodore 64 games also is obsessed with American football, but this is no ordinary American football. This is Mutant League football. And it's like if the NFL decided to throw a wild party with horror movie monsters and a side of chaos. Imagine a football game where the players are mutated monsters, aliens, and even some undead characters, all trying to score touchdowns while simultaneously trying to take each other out. The gameplay is a delightful mix of strategy and mayhem, with each team having players who are more likely to tackle with a chainsaw than with a helmet. Players get blown up by mines, set on fire, or in some cases tackled so hard they disintegrate into pixelated dust. The graphics are delightfully gritty, with players that look like they've crawled out of a horror flick, and the field is littered with traps and hazards that could turn even the most skilled player into a pile of goo. And let's not forget the outrageous special moves. Who knew a mutant could perform a backflip and a spinning kick at the same time while still holding a football? The perfect blend of sports, comedy, and over-the-top violence that reminds us all that football can be fun, especially when you throw in some mutants and a healthy dose of madness. I don't even like football, but I enjoyed playing this game, although it still just seems a load of numbers to me. I have no idea what I'm doing. Maybe I need to consult my good friend to help me with my strategy. I think generally you will be okay if you mash some buttons and run the correct way and stick a funny ball down. That's what I've been gathering anyway. I do love a good pinball game, and what better way to relax on a Halloween evening than with a comfortable pair of flippers and an assortment of steel balls to keep you entertained for the duration of the night. Often talked about, but often disregarded, Sega's oversized deluxe toaster is a powerhouse for discovering long-lost classics. If you can ever track one down, as they are becoming increasingly hard to find, and when you do, expect to pay thousands of pounds for the privilege. Pinball is a funny game. Knock a few balls about, hit a few bumpers, get a few points, but it remains a fascinatingly addictive endeavour that I am glad to be a part of. Necronomicon has 3 different horror-themed tables for you to enjoy. The game was only released in Japan, despite the vocals and text being in English. Arkham, Cult of the Bloody Tongue, and Dreamlands provide you with the necessary theming to whack your balls to your heart's content. My good friend will also be joyous that this game runs at a solid 60 frames per second. A mix of exciting FMV sequences and music specially created and composed by John Petrucci of Dream Theater just elevates this to an even more cult classic. What more could you ask for? All your favourite modes are here, like multi-ball. Well, that's all I can think of really. Trust me, this game is worth tracking down if you like your balls crisp, fast and horrific. The game that asks, what if H.P. Lovecraft had a midlife crisis and became obsessed with tilt mechanics? You're not just playing pinball, you're battling against the dark forces of rubber bumpers and the eldritch horror of multi-ball. Pinball was invented in its modern form in the 1930s by Raymond Maloney, who went on to found the Bally Manufacturing Corporation. I wonder what Raymond would think of Necronomicon, or any form of digital pinball for that matter. Here we go. This is what I've been waiting for. A bit of multi-ball action. It's important to stay calm, trap balls, focus on one ball at a time, use the chaos, and pray to the pinball gods. I can never quite make out what that bloke's saying, but it's quite spooky, and that's all that matters. Yet another foray into balls and flippers, but this time we are venturing south to find our digital ball fun on Atari's long lost, long forgotten, extra long slab of battery annihilating breath of fresh pixel air. The Atari Lynx was like carrying a small TV in your pocket, if your pocket belonged to a kangaroo. I once put batteries in an Atari Lynx and they lasted precisely 22 minutes, but at least it was in colour, I guess. A quirky attempt at bringing pinball to a handheld that looks like a brick and eats batteries like a hungry vampire. Pinball Jam actually contains 2 tables, but we are only concerned with the Elvira table for the purposes of this video, as the other concerns some sort of police nonsense. A pinball game on a handheld seems such an excellent idea, but unless you are permanently tethered to an adequate power supply, you may not get the best out of this game. The Elvira pinball table actually exists in real life and was released by Midway in 1989. If you have suitable ways to remove the standard Atari Lynx fog screen, Pinball Jam is quite an enjoyable game, with plenty of tantalising speech samples and enough ball action to keep you up all night. It's a bit cheesy, but sometimes cheese is good. Elvira and the Party Monsters is as ridiculous as it sounds. Elvira, the mistress of the dark, hosting the wildest, weirdest pinball party ever. For a game on a screen the size of a post-it note, Elvira's laugh is probably the last thing you'll hear before your batteries give up the ghost. What even is a pinball party anyway? Nobody knows. Skull Monkeys on the PlayStation is what happens when someone decides to blend a fever dream, a claymation art project and a platformer. You play as Claymen, which doesn't even make any sense. Why not Clayman? A clay figure who looks like he escaped from a middle school art class on a quest to stop an army of skull monkeys. These monkeys aren't just regular monkeys, no, they're monkey skeletons with serious attitude issues, probably from not having enough bananas in the afterlife. Control a potato-shaped hero with the jumping ability of a drunk giraffe. This game is a fever dream wrapped in plasticine. It's like the developers snorted an entire Play-Doh factory and thought, yes, this seems like a great idea. I must warn you, you will die a lot, as Clayman handles like he's been dipped in Vaseline and left in the sun. It's like platforming with a bar of soap. The power-ups make zero sense. 1 minute you're eating a chicken foot, the next you're unleashing fart attacks out of the top of your head. Literal fart attacks. This game just doesn't care. If you're looking for a bizarre, trippy experience that will make you question both your gaming skills and your life choices, Skull Monkeys is the one. This game is ridiculous. Why have those monkeys got luminous faces? I'm in such a state of shock. I cannot determine if I like this game, but I just keep on playing. I guess I cannot wait until the next surprise, which is presumably coming up at any second. It's certainly quirky. It's certainly different. It's certainly unusual. It's certainly attention grabbing. It's certainly, incontestably, unmistakably insane. The Turbo GFX 16 is actually the PC engine outside North America. I've never owned one, but sometimes I like to dip my toe in the strange world of turbos and graphics, and the number 16 to see what I can find. An incredibly original title, which gives me a strong sense that this game could be really good and give me the pure horror that I need right now. Control a washed out man wearing a grey suit with red trousers in some sort of quest or another. We are greeted with the usual standard fare for a horror platformer, it seems, although we don't always get red trousers. Dodge huge bats and rats as you kick and punch your way through a game that's been dipped in a vat of purple tango. I must say, this music isn't exactly getting me in the mood, providing a suitable degree of challenge to even bear listening to it. Bit too cheerful for my liking. I'm not sure jingles and horror really mix. A delightful mess of a game that challenges your gaming skills while simultaneously assaulting your eardrums. I think this game is trying to be an interesting Castlevania style romp, but it's not quite doing it correctly. But it is most certainly trying. Why does everything make huge space sounds when you hit them? It's not even worth thinking about too much. You know you're in deep trouble when you don't care if your grey suited, red trouser wearing man lives or dies in a game. Could I recommend Night Creatures to anyone? Yes, I could. I could recommend it to aid in a slow and painful, mind-altering experience that will leave you in total despair and wondering what day of the week it actually is. This game is as exciting as staring at a bag of small nuts in a white room for 9 hours and 34 seconds. Please, please, get rid of it. I don't know what a Zoopapa is, but I really want to find out. This game is a fairly certain rip-off of both games like Snow Brothers and Bubble Bobble, indulging in cutesy graphics and a soundtrack to match. Collect items and power-ups along the way, and do this in a certain time period, otherwise you are in a mighty amount of trouble and you will be visited by a devil creature. Plenty of monsters to shake a stick at, and plenty of strange looking enemies to qualify us into the tenuous horror link. But a game I was so fond of, the inviting graphics and gameplay, that I simply could not resist. A game that plays like it's a cotton candy explosion. Bounce around this crazy world, all set against the perfect mix of catchy yet chaotic music. If you are ready for a wild ride filled with bouncing madness, colourful chaos and a soundtrack that will haunt your dreams, then Zoopapa is the game for you. A sugary trip through a world where logic does not exist. Fight massive bears, massive Draculas, massive woolly mammoths, tiny sumo men. Extra horror. I think the creators of Demon Crest must have sat around and thought, how can we make this experience as painful as possible? Taking the phrase trial by fire and slightly adjusting it to trial by inferno. Having taken practically a day to even defeat the first boss, I endured with this game as much as I could, which wasn't very long, I'm afraid. There are clear echoes of Ghouls and Ghosts with its difficulty level to match. The graphics are glorious for one of the finest and best consoles ever made in the world. And the music is also enchanting and really makes you feel right at home, if home is a locked room full of traps, ghouls, ladders and tree stumps that you may at some point need to fly over. In Japan, this game is known as Demon's Blazon. Do not ask me why. When you know a game's been created by Capcom, you know you're in safe but difficult hands. If Firebrand is a familiar name to you, then you would be correct, as this is Mr. Firebrand's third game where he stars. Originally he turned up as an enemy in Ghosts and Goblins, but also featured in Gargoyle's Quest and Gargoyle's Quest 2. Battle your way through 6 stages, but realistically maybe only see a couple of these, depending on your skill and patience. Breathe fire and fly around and hover. As the game progresses, you can also morph into all sorts of gargoyles and use magic and spells. I would love to say I saw past level 1, but I didn't. I barely made it past a few screens. Maybe my platforming days are over, or maybe I just forgot how hard old games could be and what ridiculous difficulty they could command. Get ready to embark on a wild, wacky adventure with a game that combines the charm of Looney Tunes with the eerie vibes of a horror spectacular. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend their holiday with a stuttering pig wandering around his own nightmares? Porky Pig, your favourite swine, must make it through all carefully themed levels, of which there are 6. The usual plethora of power-ups are scattered around to help you, with this first level being a trip down to the haunted woods. If you're looking for a hilarious, slightly frustrating adventure, Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday might be worthy of your attention. I guess it depends on how much of a Looney Tunes fan you are. I recently completed acquisition of the Looney Tunes DVD box set, but have since failed to watch any of it, so I am not sure if I am experienced enough to give Porky Pig the attention he deserves. Combining horror and cartoons is often a dangerous proposition, and at this point I am rather fazed by yet another walk-along horror platform vehicle. At least the dulcet tones of the Super Nintendo sound chip can be heard to maximum effect, but that's all I can say about this game really. Join a ghostly crusade as an overstretched red-haired chap with overly large sword. A samurai sword, I presume. No time to worry about plot, just get slashing and hacking in this overly colourful adventure with garishly happy tunes to help accompany you as you slice your way to victory. By now, we have seen this genre of game done far better, but I guess if you want to treat yourself to how other games may look and feel, a Samurai Ghost might be worth having a sly go on, to remind yourself of the differences between okay games and great games. Or should that be boring games and great games? Samurai Ghost isn't really doing anything terrible, but then again, it's not really doing anything. Maybe I've become too jaded in my old age and have just seen far better examples of this style of game. Maybe. The granddaddy of the gothic horror genre returns, with the correct whips in place and the correct stylized, romantic and enchanting gameplay to make you fall in love with Castlevania all over again. This game went under another title in Japan, but I won't trouble myself with trying to explain that, as I will just pronounce it terribly wrong. The PC Engine compact disc machine is a powerful beast, and what better beast to be using for you to embark upon another Belmont adventure, this time by controlling Richter Belmont through 9 levels as he tries to rescue his kidnapped loved one, and yes, you guessed it, will have to confront the deadly Dracula once again. The 10th game in the series, this was ultimately remade and revamped and ended up turning into Castlevania Dracula X on the Super Nintendo, which goes for about £500 million. We are on a CD playing machine here, so as you can expect, the music is fantastic. I have literally nothing bad to say about this game. I wish you all the luck with that.